Hey, so what if I told you your reading slump isn't actually about reading at all? Hi, hello, happy whatever day of the week it is that you are watching this. Welcome back to my channel if you're new here. I'm Sammy, Sam Marie, Samantha Marie a lot, if you will. And today we're talking about the science behind our reading slumps, coming from the perspective of a 28-year-old psychiatric physician assistant who loves book reading and loves book collecting. So I think if we're going to talk about this, we have to get down to the nitty-gritty, the basics of this, and how are we defining a reading slump? I would say the signs of an impending reading slump are ones we all know and have experienced, probably once in our reading career. Our attention starts drifting while we're reading. We're picking up our phone time and time again in the middle of our book. And then suddenly we've started 3 books. We're in the middle of all of them and we have yet to finish one. You found yourself perusing your bookshelves, looking at all of your gorgeous, wonderful books, but you don't want to pick up any of them, not a singular one. Nothing seems interesting to you anymore, but you desperately want to read. You just simply can't. If this sounds like something you've been through, it is something I've been through. And let's rework this and look at this a different way. Let's think about the science behind what is actually happening when we've entered or encountered a reading slump, okay? It'll be okay. And if this is your first one, let me hold your hand through this. You're going to be okay. You're going to make it through. You're going to get to the other side of this. Trust me. So I'm thinking if we can start to look at this from a psychological, a scientific perspective, that might give us some helpful tips and tricks on how to effectively address and attack the reading slump. So let's get started with that. We're going to break this down into 3 topics: cognitive overload, dopamine overstimulation, and decision fatigue. Now let's start with the cognitive overload. And to start with that, we need to talk about what is cognitive load. Don't worry, I'm here to tell you. Your cognitive load is essentially the relative demand, the mental effort it is going to take to process information and complete a task. Sorry, excuse me, there's a cat that has gotten herself stuck in these doors. Jacqueline, come out. And then this will get divvied up into 3 more topics. I will not bore you too much with the details, but let's just give a little bit of background information, okay? It gets broken up into intrinsic, extraneous, and germane. Intrinsic is the relative difficulty of the actual task at hand. In our case, it's the book that we're currently trying to read. How you interpret difficulty when it comes to reading is going to vary from person to person. But from my perspective, a well-developed epic fantasy, that's going to be higher on my list of difficult reads than a cowboy romance is going to be to me personally, but that might be different and that might look different for you. This is all relative to who we are and how our brains work and what we recognize as difficult. Extraneous is the effort of processing information based on the way it is presented to you. So normally this would be in class, like how did the teacher decide to present the information to you? For us, that could be, are we using an audiobook or are we physically reading the book? Are we immersive reading? What environment have we set up to present the books to ourselves? So is our environment chaotic? Is it distracting? And then germane is the resources that you're using to make this information permanent in your brain. When you're studying in class, that's like, do you use flashcards? Do you re-summarize all the notes in your own terms? How do you do that? For us, in our specific case of reading, this is going to be, are you annotating, reflecting on your reading? Do you do a book journal? Those type of things. So if we take all 3 of these things that go into our cognitive load and combine them, just to give us an example, for me personally, it would be I'm reading a really difficult book, high epic fantasy, in the most distracting environment. My phone's right there, my laptop's right there, my husband's right there, and I want to annotate and deeply understand what's happening in the book. I want to be able to review it and explain it to other people. That could be a cognitively overwhelming situation. And then this can even lead to certain types of reactions. Some people experience paralysis. They feel stuck. A decision is not going to be made. They're going to reread the same page over and over again. For some people, this might be more of an anger or anxiety type of reaction. And then some people, it's just like total passivity. So they just go along with it. Maybe they're just skimming the book now and they have not interpreted a single thing they've read. We pick tasks and activities that are going to spike our brain's reward system quick, instant gratification. And what do we think the most common high dopamine type of activity there is that we all participate in? I'll give you a moment. Doom scrolling, social media. And that'll lead me into our next topic. Stick with me. And that next topic is dopamine overstimulation. Dopamine. It is our feel-good hormone. That's what we call it. That's what we know it as, our feel-good hormone. Our brain is really wired and it naturally likes to feel reward. We like to feel joy. We like to feel pleasure in this life. The fastest way to do this is with a high dopamine activity. And the most common one that we have today that is used daily is social media, our phones, digital entertainment overall. If you go on TikTok, you're getting exposed to a new stimulus every few seconds. I mean, maybe you stick around for a 30-second video. Maybe you're doing a little bit better and you stick around for those 5-minute videos, but then you scroll and there's something new, something to actively participate in. And that gives you a lot of instant gratification. And this feels really good for a little while until we exhaust those reserves, those collections of dopamine that we had in the brain. We tire them out and then it doesn't feel so good anymore. This starts to make us feel less motivated and we're almost desensitized to being able to enjoy more stimuli because we've just time and time again and very, very fast have exposed ourselves to so much. And then so future rewards are not going to seem as exciting. You know, when you're on hour 3 or 4 of this doom scrolling, none of the videos are going to be hitting for you anymore. And that's how we can really overwhelm the dopamine system in our brains. But also, reading is not going to fall into a high dopamine activity. It could, depending on the kind of reads that you're reading. Overall, reading as a whole is not going to be a high dopamine activity. It's going to require some time and effort. You have to put something in it to get anything back. Most of the time, it's a payoff sort of situation. It's a delayed reward, delayed gratification, if you will. Let's talk a little bit about our last topic, and then we will address this. We'll address everything as a whole. And our third topic to talk about is decision fatigue. I'm sure you've experienced this before, but let's get into how this relates to books. I know, book girly to book girly or book guy, ladies and gentlemen of the reader community. I know, like myself and like many of you, we participate in not only one hobby here, but two, and that is book reading, but that is also book buying. Whether we want to call it a hobby or addiction, that's nobody else's business but our own. Okay, let's keep it between us. When we buy so many books, our book buying habit starts to outweigh our book reading habit. The physical TBR, I'm looking at mine right now, can become overwhelming. Not for everybody. Some people like having all the decisions, but some days looking at that physical TBR and being ready to start a brand new read can be quite a daunting task. A blessing and a curse all wrapped up into one beautiful bookshelf. The decision overall can be fatiguing and we can just be left with not wanting to make the decision at all. With all three of these things in mind, how can we address these from a psychological standpoint? How can we actually attack this and just avoid the reading slump altogether? Let's talk about 4 overarching ideas on how to address the reading slump before it addresses and attacks us. Number 1, we're going to simplify the task. There's a number of different ways we can do this. First and foremost, the easiest reminder I can give you is just pick an easier read. Pick a read that's not going to feel so overwhelming for you. Pick something what we all like to call a quote-unquote palate cleanser, or even to make it that much simpler, do a reread, because you're not going to have to process the information at such a high level anymore because you've already read the information, you already understand the book. You're just there to experience it for a second time. And that's why rereading some of your favorite reads, or even some of your like 3 to 4 star reads, is a really good way to attack a reading slump. It's less of a cognitive load to address if you're rereading a book you've already read. But there are other ways that we can simplify the task overall. One thing I always like to remind people is you do not have to read 200 pages a day to be a reader. You can read 10 pages. We all have different life schedules. We all have different cognitive loads. But one thing we have in common is we love to read. And so there's no judgment against whether you're reading a gazillion pages a day or if you're reading 5 pages a day. Take advantage of the time that you do have in a day to read. But if it's not going to work into your schedule for the day, that is okay. Pick up your book the next day. It can feel overwhelming if you're like, well, I need to read half of this book today. You don't have to do that. Read 30 pages and see where you get. And one thing I will stand on too is audiobooks do count towards your reading goal. So why don't you simplify the task? If you have 1,018 things to do, you have to clean the house, you have to take the kids to school, you have to go to work, you have to do all of these things that we all have to do in our daily life. You have to grocery shop. Put on an audiobook for the activities that you can do that for. You don't have to put eyes to paper. You can put ears to headphones. We stand for that on this page. And if you are an annotating girly, if you are a thorough book reviewer, maybe, hear me out, maybe don't annotate this one. If you really enjoy it afterwards, you'll want to reread it at some point and you can annotate it then. Just have a good little fun time, okay? Number 2 is taking breaks. Put your phone down. I did not mean that kind of break. Do not take a doom scrolling break. Go outside and enjoy the sunshine for 10 minutes. Go for a 10-minute walk, and hey, put the audiobook on while you're walking. Go pet your dog or your cat. Go give them some snuggles. Go give them some love. Change your environment. Get up and move for a little bit. Do 10 jumping jacks. Do 10 squats. Just take a little break, get the blood flowing a little bit, then get back to your book. But take little breaks here and there. You can read for 25 minutes. 25 minutes on, 10 minutes off. 25 minutes on, 10 minutes off, you know? Number 3, if it isn't obvious, let me just tell you, let me just remind you, because sometimes we need to be reminded of things. Why don't you remove or reduce some of your options and some of the decision behind choosing your next read or reading in general? And there's a few different ways we can do this, but I know all of us collectively have seen a TBR video from time to time, and they are fun videos to watch. But TBR jars, TBR wheels, I've seen a TBR dartboard before. Different ways to pick out books from your TBR without you really having to do too much of the work. I just want to remind everybody, you don't have to be filming a video to do your own TBR jar. You can just do that for fun at your house. This is a hobby. It's meant to be enjoyed. Do whatever you got to do to make it fun. You don't have to film a whole video about it. But a TBR wheel, you could just put every book you have on your physical TBR on it and literally let the wheel make the decision for you. That removes any decision from it. But you could put prompts on the TBR wheel so it gives you a little bit more guidance, but you could still choose your read. And also, same thing with TBR jar. You could put the whole TBR just in there so that way you pick out, you open it up, it's a book. Or you could do TBR prompt jar. So you pick it out and it has different prompts. Sometimes being told what to do will help you realize what you actually want to do as well. Those are just different ways to reduce and remove decisions from it. But you can also, let your husband pick out your read. Let your pets pick out your read. Close your eyes and just grab a book off of the shelf, and then you have to be stuck reading it. And lastly, make it a ritual, make it a habit. A lot of us probably have a certain time of the day that no matter what happened in the day, we're going to be reading. And if you don't have that in your routine yet, I definitely recommend it. I find it really fun when I prioritize to read first thing in the morning. So if that's waking up 30 minutes before I actually have to get up, get ready, and go to work for the day, it does make my brain feel a little bit happier if I have that morning ritual. It takes 28 days to build a habit, so do it for 28 days in a row and get it done. A lot of people always read before bed. Sometimes I can do this, sometimes I can't. Sometimes if I start reading a book and I get too into it, then I'm going to be up until 3 a.m. So it's just finding what's going to work for you. When I worked in the outpatient setting, I always knew I was going to have a 30-minute lunch break or an hour lunch break, depending on what office I was working at then. I was always reading my book, no matter what. So yeah, there's different ways to make it a ritual, make it a habit. Find a place in your day that reading is always going to work out, like 9 times out of 10, and make that a ritual, make it a habit. Do whatever you have to do to make it stick. Again, whether that is making sure you have a gorgeous, tasty morning coffee. At nighttime, you always have a nighttime tea with your book. There's a bunch of different ways that we can really really address and attack this reading slump. We do not have to let it get us before we get it. So I think it's important. Let's reframe the slump. A slump is not the end of the world. I know it feels like it. Your brain is probably just a little bit overwhelmed, overworked, and tired. Most of the time, you don't have to push yourself harder. You don't have to push yourself over the edge. You don't have to fatigue yourself so much to get out of the reading slump. You just need to meet your brain where they're at right now. And I will remind you, start small and the rest will follow. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you have any more specific questions, leave them in the comments. Let me know what you're going through. We can chat about it. Have a wonderful rest of your week, weekend, whatever it is, and happy reading.